XFM. Elis James and John Robbins on XFM podcast.
Folks, welcome to the podcast download of the Elis James and John Robbins show on XFM. I think we can safely say we've had a belter today. We really enjoyed the show. Cracking winner plays on. Lovely textual healing.
Also the most controversial sacred cow of all time.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the volcano in the middle of this landscape.
Well, when John had to take one of the links because at one stage I thought I was having a heart attack and my chest felt weird.
Yeah.
And I've eaten 3 fry-ups this week, but I thought to myself, is that enough? Is it enough to tip me over the edge? I thought the fact that I'm agitated about this sacred cow and those 3 fry-ups.
As producer Dave pointed out, it would have been award bait if you had died like that.
Yeah.
So come on, mate, next time take one for the team, 4 fry-ups. Let's get this Sony award in the bag.
But yeah, really hope you enjoy it. We had a lot of fun on today's show. Obviously, you can listen to us live every Sunday between 10 and 1. And if you want to contact the show, if you have a problem for textual healing or you'd like to suggest a band for Sacred Cow, email us on sunday@xfm.co.uk.
Yep, that's Sunday, not Sundays, just to be clear, because I think we're probably a lot of emails are not getting through.
Yeah,
about to the email address.
And I will hold my hand up because for the first 2 weeks we had that email address, I thought it was Sundays. So sorry, guys.
So enjoy the show, folks. It was a pleasure to do, and do tell your friends if you like the podcast, because we like to have as many people getting involved as possible. And have a lovely week. Bye bye.
Goodbye.
Elis James and John Robbins podcast. XFM.
Good morning. Today, my castaway is a man familiar to many, especially those who've seen web-based sitcom pilots made by his friends. He's an actor, writer, and part-time stand-up comedian. What some of you might not know, he's also an entrepreneur, part owner of a second-hand tyre dealer in Neath, and a chain of Llandudno-based adult stores called Arouse. He's the author of 3 novels, Whale's Tales, Cumbran Ya, My Lord, and My Family and Other Chlanimals. I am, of course, joined by Mr. Elis James. Elis, you were born in Carmarthen and your dad was a quantity surveyor. That must have been very difficult for you.
Yes, I remember staring at my father, must have been about 1990, and he was working on one of his estimates. And I said, "What's that, Dad?" He said, "I'm working on a disabled ramp for a special school." And I said, "How are you finding it?" And he went, "Well, it's fine, and then I'll move on to a conservatory for a small building firm in Llandudno." And we hugged.
And what was your first memory of wanting to perform or to create? Where did that creative urge come from?
I wanted to break out of the shackles of my upbringing, and I wanted to be loved, and I wanted to feel love, and I thought that the best way of achieving this was sort of professional showing off.
And where was your first experience of performance?
A pub called the Mochyn D, it's still there.
The Mochyn D,
the Black Pig.
The Black Pig, a wonderful parochial ring to it there.
Yeah, and there were only 7 people in the audience. They were a girls' hockey team, and they were having a much-needed pint of cider after a practice session. And I made enough of them laugh to think that I might have a feature in this.
And talk to us a bit about school. Were you an academic child?
Yes, immensely bright.
And what subjects did you excel in?
I would say all of the creative subjects. Not a natural physicist, but certainly when it came to English and history, I just felt real love for those topics.
So surely excelling in topics like English and history, Oxbridge must have called.
No, because unfortunately I didn't have the privileged upbringing of someone who grew up in Thornbury and attended Castle School maybe in the late 90s.
That's an interesting example of a mainly working and middle-class town outside of Bristol. So, Elis, let's have a track. What's your first track for us today, and do you want to tell us about why that's important to you?
They're known in many circles as the Defenders of the North, even though they're from Leicester. I feel profoundly attached to this group because of their lyrics, horse meat in the burgers, people committing murders, being watched by Google, everyone's on Bugle. That really speaks to me. So this is Easy by Kasabian.
Elis James and John Robbins podcast.
You're listening to Elis James and John Robbins, and for anyone who listened to that first link, John hadn't planned that with me and hadn't told me he was going to do a Desert Island Discs pastiche. When the music started, I thought producer Dave had got it wrong. And I also thought that he wasn't going to rectify his mistake and just thought, I've lost my mind, I'm just going to leave it. Maybe people think it's Radio 4 and then I won't even lose my job.
We're riffing, jamming, shock jocking there, Elis. Sorry to take you by surprise. Sometimes that inspiration just hits you. You send producer Dave a text at 1 a.m, a little bit worse for wear. Next thing you know, you've got award-winning radio on your hands.
And producer Dave will be up because he's a superstar DJ. Were you DJing last night, Dave?
Yes.
Was there anyone on the dance floor?
Not many, no. In fact, I played one song, 2 people moved further away from me because of the track that I was playing.
Where was it? I should have come because I was out on the what can I say?
Out on the razzle.
Out on the razzle with TV's John Richardson last night.
Oh.
So, I dare say a few ales were quaffed and then a lovely curry and then home by 9:30.
I bought a bottle of Doom Bar yesterday and I got ID'd.
Did you?
Yeah, I'm 33. And I was absolutely thrilled.
Also, Doom Bar.
What about it? It's nice.
Yeah, I know, but as a 15-year-old, isn't it?
Oh, yes, that is...
And, convince his friends down at the park to turn into real ale buffs.
Would it be much better if, 14, 15-year-old kids drinking in the park were real, members of Camera?
Oh, mate,
Great.
Dino's got Good Pub Guide 2015, man. It's absolutely sick, man. You've been to the Clarendon Arms? Oh, man. They got 3 craft beers. They got 2 guest ales. Oh, you're sick.
Oh, I live next to Evening
Gastro!
I live next to Evening Standard Pub of the Year 1981.
Do you?
Yeah, they've still got a plaque on the wall. So it was a great pub 33 years ago, but it's still a nice pub.
Is it all right?
It is, yeah.
In where I live, in Lewisham, there is one amazing pub and about 10 awful... when they've converted a pub basically into a nightclub.
Oh, yeah.
And they're absolutely horrific.
And all the lagers in plastic glasses.
Yeah. Anyway, Elis.
Well, there'll be more of this sort of top quality pub chat. I mean, John and I will talk about pubs at 10:17 a.m. That's the sort of mavericks we are.
Elis, do you want to read out the tweet that we discussed?
Yes, I did. Sorry.
So, what's been coming in on the text and tweets, Elis?
Sorry about that. I'm Today's independent preview of the Edinburgh Fringe, John Robbins, a self-deprecating charmer with prime-time TV appeal. Sorry, I got it wrong, and that's the important bit of that tweet. John Robbins has prime-time TV appeal. It's quite a difficult sentence to say.
Try riffing an entire Desert Island Disc sketch, mate.
Right, okay. If anyone's interested.
Let's just go to a track and then go home.
No, I will not have that. That's a very nice tweet we've had in from Hiker G. John's going to Edinburgh on Tuesday, and it's going to be a great show, and it's going to be...
That is the worst...
This is the worst
thing that's ever happened.
Elis James and John Robbins podcast on XFM.
I'll just start talking. The song's never going to end.
That's It's Still Alive by Pearl Jam. You're listening to Elis James and John Robbins on XFM. Pearl Jam, who are in the abattoir after last week, although producer Dave has just said that doesn't mean we can't not still play them on the show.
That's not how I talk.
Yeah, sorry. Hi, I'm producer Dave. We should talk like that. That'd be amazing. No, it'd be much less fun. Have you seen this price? €4 for a toasty. That is not funny, but you're joking, aren't you?
We've got a wonderful ethnic/class divide in this radio station. We've got working class Elis James, slate born of Wales soil.
I think the phrase you're looking for is proletarian superhero.
We've got producer Dave, who is the living example of Thatcher's vision. He's son of a self-made timber magnate, made good. Absolutely no. Why shouldn't he have a Ferrari? Why shouldn't he go out large in it? He's earned it. And then just sort of dignified upper-class nobility of Robbins. And it's wonderful, because that's why we appeal to so many different listeners.
And when, you're listening to the Elis James and John Robbins show on XFM, which, as John said, appeals to people across the class divide in today's United Kingdom. Producer Dave, obviously, he's the son of a Stockport-born timber magnate, and whenever he buys you a drink, he goes, "No, it's all right, I'm earning."
Yeah. And then makes that gesture with his fingers.
Yeah,
to say money.
they're rubbing his finger and thumbs together in a sort of, "Oh, it's all right." And what I love about Producer Dave is at any one time he's always got 600 quid in cash rolled up in his back pocket.
Yes, for paying people off, getting out of emergencies, never less than the fee of a flight to southern Spain. He can walk into any airport and just get away if things get a bit hot, if there's a bit of heat around. So we get on so well, Elis. I don't think it's possible that we would fall out.
No, I'd like to think so.
We've never even come close to falling out, have we?
No, I don't think... No, we haven't. But, isn't that what great friendship is?
Yeah, but it's weird. I mean, I once... the only time I think I've ever... Once... my best friend, who I've known for 15, 16 years... I think we've had 2 arguments in that time, which is why I think you should marry your friends. Once was about the lyrics to a David Pajo song called... David Pajo, sorry, I was being ironic. David Pajo song, "I Have Mine," and that caused about 50 minutes of tension in a pub, and it caused one of our mutual friends to just walk away.
And the thing is, you see, when was this argument?
2003.
The smartphone has completely eliminated this sort of debate now.
Yeah.
Because you just instantly Google it and some weirdo will have put it on Yahoo Answers.
And the other time was when he asked me, how do you make a bolognese more flavoursome? And I said, add salt. And he tasted, and I said, add salt and always taste. And he tasted with the spoon he was stirring it with. And as a kind of half joke, half intentionally being an idiot, I went, with a separate spoon. And he said, you're a bit much in the kitchen sometimes, John. And that caused maybe 15 seconds tension before I went and apologised. So... what we'd like to hear from you listeners on 83936, tweet at XFM, is what are the tiniest things that have caused the biggest rifts with your friends, your family, your partners, little minutiae of everyday life, tiny pathetic arguments, for example, like me and Robin had about song lyrics.
XFM. Elis James and John Robbins on XFM podcast.
You're listening to Elis James and John Robbins on XFM, and today we're talking about massive arguments from tiny acorns groweth. We've had some absolute belters in. We've had 2 on the subject of mushrooms in spaghetti bolognese. It's a hot topic. Are you a mushroom hater or are you a fun guy?
I'm a mushroomist.
Do you get it?
No. Oh, yeah, I do now, yeah.
Fun guy. So, from Charlie, I got into a row with my now wee girlfriend, don't know what that means, with my now ex-girlfriend, over whether or not to put mushrooms into spag bol. She hated them, I love them. I'm with you, Charlie. I'm a mushroom apologist. We've had another tweet. Made a bolognese, left the room, and my mate put mushrooms in it, threw a paddy, and refused to eat it. I can understand you throwing a paddy that he's interfered with your cooking. That's very annoying. Backseat kitchen driver would be frustrating.
I think, to be honest, I'm a team player. If it improves the dish, I don't mind who's getting involved.
Yeah, but so if you were making something, I'd chuck a load of hot sauce in, and you'd be
Yeah, but that's not
devastated.
going to improve the dish. That's going to devastate the dish.
Scott in Bournemouth has texted in to say, to this day, my best friend and I still strongly disagree on the correct way to address the deformed guy in the Goonies. Is he called Slough or Sloth? It's Slough, damn it, Slough. I feel much better now, thanks guys. It's Sloth, mate. You've clearly never seen the Goonies, because they cover that in the film, unsurprisingly.
I mean, it must be said every 5 minutes in the film.
Yeah.
And, I mean, just watch the film with subtitles on.
Yeah, just watch the film. It's pointless arguing about something that could be just solved by watching the thing in question.
There isn't a character in one of the sort of greatest 80s kids films of all time named after the small commuter town outside Reading.
When
famous by The Office.
When I'm listening to the Ellis James and John Robbins show, I can't work out, is it Ellis or Elis? And every time I listen to the Ellis James and John Robbins show, I just can't work it out.
Yeah, I like that Jahone Robbins.
Oh, we've got loads coming in on this. Whilst taking a coach trip, me and my best friend started to play PC games on a laptop. The game was Heroes of Might and Magic. Strategic game we used to play at uni 15 years ago. By the time the laptop battery ran out, we had argued why none or other nicked... I should not have read out this thing before reading it because it is absolutely unintelligible. But we argued about why
one or other nicked Els's wood, gold, stone,
etc.
Who started war. It took us hour to argue, not speak, argue. We were both 34 years old.
Is that a dream he's had?
Sounds like he's speaking in tongues.
Someone said it's pronounced slough. It's not pronounced slough. That's the joke my stepdad makes when I'm going to Slough. He'll go, oh, slough. It's not... No. Come on, guys. Up your game.
XFM. Ellis James and John Robbins on XFM podcast.
That was Breathe by The Prodigy. You're listening to Ellis James and John Robbins on XFM. The tone in the studio has changed. Producer Dave is giving me daggers from the desk. It's time for Sacred Cow. I need to warn you, this could well
XFM
be
Sacred
the stab
Cow.
for Sacred Cow. So there you go. It could be one of the most controversial Sacred Cows ever. To that end, Dave is so keen for this band to go in the paddock that he has said there are 3 examples of their music in the little hook we play, and he's going to fade the mics down so I can't speak over them.
I've got butterflies in my stomach. I haven't felt nervous about anything for about 5 years.
Guys, I don't mean to sway your decision, but if this band were to go in the abattoir, it would be really interesting radio. My nomination for this week's Sacred Cow, that caused about half an hour of arguments on text last night, is empty-headed, Beck-swilling, vacuous anthem-creating Oasis. There we go. 3 of their pop tracks there from Oasis. Now, I'm gonna sort of full disclosure here. I think Oasis are a good band. I think at times they're a great band. I think they make really lovely pop songs. Few sort of good anthems, if maybe slightly meaningless when you actually drill down to the detail.
My eyes are burning.
That said,
my eyeballs feel hot.
That said, in the last 10 years, they are an absolute joke. They are self-parodying. I understand that's fine, but they're not. You cannot worship them.
I disagree. I think they just, like the Rolling Stones, they realised what they were good at, and they just wrote great sort of rock songs.
They did in the early 90s, absolutely, and the mid-90s to a certain extent, but since 98... I
would say they made the odd misstep, but I think there are absolute belting tunes on every one of their albums, and by the time they got to sort of heathen chemistry era, they realised what they were good at, and that was sort of Stooges-esque, sort of quite heavy rock anthems, and they're great at that, I think. And also, their first 2 albums are exceptional.
Agreed.
Definitely
Agreed.
is tremendous.
2 albums, mate. That's
And
half an album
Liam's
more.
haircuts are so
That's
good.
half an album more than the Stone Roses had.
Liam's haircuts and his coats, that white coat he wore at
if you're
Glastonbury.
already talking about their coats and hair, then clearly their music doesn't bear
But
scrutiny.
that's what a great rock band is all about.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Oh, come on. You're not a teenage girl.
No. But I think all of the best British bands, especially, were a gang.
Have good coats.
And yes, I
Right, okay.
100% agree.
That's an insane thing to say.
No, 'cause
all the best British bands have good coats.
Yes, I completely agree with that. Like the rubber soul era Beatles coats, where that picture of the Beatles in the park and Lennon's wearing that lovely sort of
Good coats. I like coats.
and Oasis were good at coats. And Liam had a fantastic fringe, and he wore superb parkas, and they spoke to so many people, and they are real tunes. And also, I think everyone takes the mickey out of Noel's lyrics, but I think his lyrics on the first album are great.
Yeah, they are.
Because it's about leaving Manchester and...
I'm not saying they're not. The point also, we discussed Oasis weeks ago, and you said all they ever wanted to do was write songs you can whistle along to. Which is fine, that's fine. But you cannot worship that. That is not a belief system.
It is, because that's exceptionally difficult to do. And that's what...
No, it's not. The Tin Pan Alley was formed on the fact that that's very simple to do. 3 chords, G, D, A, bang.
I disagree, because loads
People
of...
facts agree.
because loads of people try and write great pop songs. Not everyone is into music to be the next Velvet Underground.
Anyone can write a catchy pop song. It's very easy.
Well, why aren't you doing it? Because
Natasha Bedingfield, Avril Lavigne,
You've got a scope
Rhiannon.
Why aren't you doing this?
Because it's not of interest to me, and I can't sing and play guitar at the same time. I just find it confusing. So, producer Dave has remained remarkably calm, I think because he's been reassured by the avalanche of texts and tweets we've already had that it's going to be an easier day for him. So, as I promised, Robbins is going to step up to level 2.
Also, I just need to say this. So Princess Minion, who's tweeted us, just woken up, my head hurts, bit confused. Now XFM are dissing Oasis. No, just no. I'm not. I'm trying to defend them. So, the Welsh guy, I'm defending him. and Stockport Dave is about to get involved here.
I don't want to cause any kind of geographical rift, but the Beatles don't rely on Liverpudlians as their fan base.
But Oasis don't rely on Mancunians. I'm from Carmarthen, and I think they're brilliant.
Yeah, but if it wasn't for the North-West, they would not be seen as some sacred cow, which is exactly the point of this feature.
I disagree, because they sold hundreds of millions of records. They were massive. They were the biggest
Everyone in
band on the
Manchester
planet.
bought 100 copies.
That is not true.
Elis James and John Robbins podcast. XFM.
We are talking about those tiny, tiny little pathetic, small, insignificant arguments you have with your friends or maybe your girlfriend or boyfriend that then become much, much bigger things. Because John once had an argument with his friend about song lyrics.
The lyrics to a Papa M song. Great album, that. It's an album, an EP. Papa M sings. Absolutely brilliant. Is it his mind is disease or his mind is diseased, though? That was the burning topic, I think.
It's really... Things became tense between John and I over a question I asked him about farthings. Some of you might already know that. But we've had lots of texts and tweets in about this. I got in a huge row with my best mate about what the phrase early mid-30s meant, causing us to not speak for the rest of the day. I still stand by my reasoning that it can only mean the age 34.
Well, I would argue that there isn't a phrase early mid-30s. No one has ever said that before.
Well, bearing in mind that I'm sort of careering towards my 34th birthday, I've started to use it in the last, two days. You know, I mean, I'm in my early mid-30s. Yeah, cool. Yeah, you know, the first bit of the mid-30s, which is still young. I'm still young and relevant.
I like this one from Jamie. I once had a week-long argument with my then wife about quote, the very idea of bandwidth regarding Wi-Fi availability. I have no idea what that argument could possibly have been about, but I love the fact that it would cause A, a fractious argument, and B, someone to be a then wife.
Yes, that's my favourite bit of that sentence. My then, wow, dear.
FM, Elis James and John Robbins podcast.
As part of Sacred Cow this week, Robbins has made the immensely controversial decision to nominate Oasis. I think he's wrong. I think they're a superb band. I think they are.
It's getting really close on the text and tweets. I love it.
It's getting very tense in the studio because my eyeballs hurt because I'm so annoyed.
14:11.
And David has gone very, very quiet. So I think Oasis inspired a generation of bands. If you've ever been to one of their gigs, I went to see them at the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff about 8 or 9 years ago, and it's extraordinary to see when they come on. They are loved by millions and millions of people, and I think they've made some great records. And I think Noel Gallagher's a fantastic pop sort of songwriter. I think he's lyrically actually quite underrated, especially on the first album.
Gonna call you up on that one.
And
Elis.
also, he is the most interesting interviewee in rock music history. I think he's absolutely tremendous, and I will always buy a magazine or The Enemy or something if Noel's in it, because he is great value. There's a great YouTube clip of Noel's best bits of interviews over the last 20 years. He could be a stand-up comic, and that is why people love them, because they mean so much to...
Be a stand-up comic then?
Well... No, because you've got Skoda Fabia, mate. He'll put you out of a job. If he starts taking your gigs, he's already made millions of pounds from songwriting. Robbins doesn't agree for some reason. So get involved. Tweet us at XFM or text us on 83936.
Elis James and John Robbins podcast.
XFM.
On XFM.
Now, listeners, it's time for the part of the show where producer Dave hands me a piece of paper and I have to read whatever's written on it. So here we go. Oh dear. Oh no, he was not misunderstood, producer Dave. He was the worst dictator of the 20th century. He was not. No, he wasn't. It wasn't warped by Allied propaganda. You can't say... it's actually illegal. What do you mean, anyone who's actually read Mein Kampf? You can't say that sentence, Dave. Good Lord. Well, I'm not going to read that out, listeners. Anyway, I'm going to actually instead tell you about a series of special stripped-down acoustic gigs that we're putting on across the summer on XFM.
FM, Elis James and John Robbins on XFM podcast.
The debate is raging on in the studio. John and Dave are no longer speaking. I'm being the sort of Kofi Annan here, the ACAS, who is current Secretary General of the UN.
Ban Ki-moon.
Ban Ki-moon. I'm being Ban Ki-moon.
I'd just like to read out some of the texts and tweets, if that's all right, guys.
Okay.
Abattoir due to crimes against humanity on Be Here Now. I'm with John. Stick them in the abattoir for goodness sake. I've never understood why they're idolised.
Right.
Abattoir, the most sense ever spoken about Oasis. You can't worship a band like that. First album, excellent. Pretty much everything else, rubbish. Way overrated. I will never listen to your station again. Dave's prophecy coming true. Abattoir, please. It's about time. Cannot stand Oasis.
If you're going to read
definite abattoir.
If you're going to read out texts and tweets, then you need to make them fair, John. And we've had plenty defending Oasis. For instance, the last one on my screen says, Elis, take your cup in your hand, throw it to the ground, stand, turn and walk out the door and just keep walking. This is blasphemy.
Oasis for the abattoir?
Right, I think...
abattoir all day long.
I think it's time we get on a mutual friend of ours, fellow comedian Matt Ford, who's an absolutely massive fan of Oasis, to defend Oasis, because I've kept my powder dry, so I've got Matt here. Matt, are you on the line?
Yeah, I am, yeah. Hello, boys.
Right, obviously you're a friend of John and ours, John and me.
Well, for the time being, yeah.
Fordy, go for it.
Mate, the problem I have with this is that there are some people in life who really enjoy just enjoying themselves, and there are some people who like to be cynical and whine, and they pretty much divide into people who like Oasis and people who don't. They're the biggest, not just the biggest, the best and most important band of my lifetime. They're the only band really that made Britain feel good. And this whole nonsense about Their albums got worse. Be Here Now's their best album. Big, swaggering, drugged up, drunken anthems that defined an era. Big 8 long-minute intros. They were the sound of a country that was finally confident with itself, and everyone else was just whining.
Why is
and
having
compared to all the
8-minute long
nonsense
intros
that
a good
Robin
thing?
listens to, like bloody Private Pork Chop and all the whiny stuff that people listen to in their bedroom, pretending that the world was over. If you want to get out there, if you enjoy breathing breath, you enjoy Oasis.
But you can't. Okay, I take your point. They're, a great live band sometimes, but
The best live band. The Arctic Monkeys in Finsbury Park just a few weeks ago, and they were tragic. They were awful, sterile nonsense, and a posturing that they've become.
are you genuinely saying "Be Here Now" is Oasis's best album?
Definitely.
Well, that's madness.
It's not the way you just became.
It's madness. Producer Dave, by the way, is punching the air.
Yeah,
when
I
he said
agree.
that.
It's like an Oasis
It's a great
gig,
album.
isn't it? Don't go
Listen
away,
to it.
stand by me, all around the world. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. I hope I think I know. My big mouth.
Girl in the dirty shirt.
Oh my God, it's a phenomenal album. That's an album that is summertime on a CD.
I texted 40 about 20 minutes ago saying, "Are you ready to do this?" And he went, "I'm in HMV. I'm buying Oasis." The man
Yeah.
lives and breathes Oasis.
Yeah, just bought the Definitely Maybe 3 CD deluxe set.
Oh,
It's only $9.99 in HMV.
Lovely stuff.
Well,
But you put Oasis on, you feel good. If I ever feel, on the rare occasion that I don't feel 100%, I'll put Oasis on and I'll go from 99 to 100. Constantly makes you feel good. No other band does that for you.
all right, so they're a feel-good
And
band.
they're funny.
We
They're
put that on the
funny
poster.
people.
Feel-good band.
There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with being a feel-good band, mate.
Well, thanks very much for calling, Matt. You've given a very eloquent, passionate defence for Oasis there. How much... We haven't got... I wanted to play a game to make my point, but I think I've made my point. So we're going to pass over to the entirely objective and balanced, calm Mr. Producer Dave to tell us whether Oasis have made the paddock or the abattoir. Producer Dave, company man.
Well, everyone's entitled to their opinion.
They are.
And it was. I mean, it's got the biggest reaction we've ever had since we started Sacred Cow in the very first week of the show, and it's divided opinion. There's a lot of passion both for and against Oasis, but just I would say with maybe 55% of the votes, Oasis are in the paddock, of course.
Where's that 55%?
XFM. Ellis James and John Robbins on XFM podcast.
It is time for regular feature. Said regular there, like Elis usually does. Textual healing.
I told her that I was in Bend It Like Beckham. I have a doll's house in my bedroom. I think I've just drank some wood. Right?
XFM.
Textual.
Textual.
Well, this is the time in the show where we solve listeners' conundrums and get them to call in. This week we have on line 5, Henry. Are you there, Henry?
Hello.
Hello there. How are you doing today?
I'm okay.
What's your
but
problem?
I'm suffering with a problem though.
Oh, well, you're in the right place. Just tell us, leave it in our hands, and Elis and I will solve it for you.
Okay. Well, my problem involves 15 brownies.
Right.
The snack.
Right. Not the sort of female form of beavers or cubs.
Correct. I've got. Well, basically, I've been with the same woman for 3 years, and it was our anniversary a couple of days ago, and she gave me a Tupperware container full of 15 homemade brownies.
Yeah.
And they are the trouble with these brownies is that they can only be described as harrowing. They're harrowing brownies.
she's trying to make them ultra healthy. There's a special ultra healthy brownie recipe, which there's no sugar in them. There's no butter. There's no chocolate. They're made out of a mixture of figs, dried figs, dates, and orange juice.
Oh no, citrus in a cake! I cannot abide it.
Exactly. And they look. I can only describe them as they look has the texture of a minced stool. And they're very adhesive. They stick.
How many?
Highly adhesive.
So you were given 15. How many remain?
Well, we're down to 14.
14 and a half.
We're down to 14, and that's after 2 days.
And what does your partner feel about them? Does she like them?
Well, the thing is, they're for me.
Right.
So she isn't really eating them, which is part of the problem, because they're on a daily basis. They're not dwindling in the correct way. The brownies should dwindle.
So obviously you'll be keen not to upset her with your feedback on the unpleasant brownies. I'm going to suggest, Henry, making a chocolate mix. So basically just melted chocolate. And,
I'm just writing this down. Sorry.
Yeah. And you claim to her that it's a vegan, non-sugar chocolate recipe, whereas actually it's chock full of chalk and sugar. You dip them in, and
of course.
that's going to go. That's going to go.
I hadn't considered dipping. I'm just sort of. I'm an idiot. Yeah, so carry on.
It's the only way you can alter the flavour. So you dip them in.
Of course.
And once you've cooled, you say to her, "Look, the brownie is now like our love, because you have made the meat, and I have added the coating of security. So you have then added something romantic to them, turned it into a metaphor, an analogy, and then you use the chocolate to hide the disappointing taste of the brownie."
So it's become a metaphor for the entire relationship.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, not only can I solve this problem, I can actually push things on to the next level.
Yes, exactly.
That's fantastic.
Thank you very much for calling, Henry, and we do hope
Thank you.
you were able to resolve the problem.
Elis James and John Robbins podcast. XFM.
Now it's time for our favourite part of the show, regular feature Winner Plays On.
This is part of the show where Elis and I compete with 5 questions each on specialised topics. If you lose, you have to change topic. If you win, you get to choose a chosen track. Elis, you lost last week. What's your topic for this week?
My topic this week is Robert De Niro.
Lovely stuff. And mine, as last week, is T.S. Eliot's seminal modernist masterpiece, The Wasteland. So flick a coin to see who goes first. Elis, heads or tails?
Tails for Wales, please.
It's heads. It's queens for Queen. So, I will ask you questions first, if that's all right.
No problem.
5 questions on Hollywood actor Robert De Niro, starting now. What was the name of the character that De Niro played in Meet the Fockers?
I don't know.
Jack Tiberius Burns. Name either of the 2 films De Niro has directed.
New York, New York.
No.
I cannot remember.
Okay. What was the name of the character De Niro played in The Godfather Part 2?
Vito Corleone.
Correct. Which 2 films has De Niro won Oscars for?
Taxi Driver.
Nope. Best Actor Oscars, I should say.
Oh, Raging Bull.
Correct.
Cape Fear.
Incorrect. It's Raging Bull and Godfather Part 2. What was the name of the last film he was Oscar nominated for?
Oh, it was in 2012 and it was Best Supporting Actor and I can't remember.
That was Silver Linings Playbook.
Yeah, that's the one.
A grand total of 1.
Don't say grand total if it's 1.
A total of 1. Okay. So, come on.
Robert De Niro was too broad. I should have known. I tried to do a bit of revision last night, and as I was reading his Wikipedia page, I thought, he's done too much. The man is 70.
Over 90 films.
He's been in films since 1963.
We should point out at this point that the winner gets to play one of their favourite tracks.
I pointed that out, Dave.
Sorry?
I pointed that out.
Did you say what the tracks were?
No.
Okay.
I'm having Misshapes by Pulp, which you can look forward to hearing in about a minute and a half's time.
Yeah. Well, it's irrelevant what what I chose because John studied this poem at Oxford University and he keeps going on about it. Right. Okay, John. 5 questions on C.S. Eliot's modernist masterpiece, The Wasteland, starting now. Question 1. Eliot originally considered calling the poem "He Do the Police in Different Voices." Where does this strange phrase come from?
It's Charles Dickens's Our Mutual Friend.
Yeah. Oh, this is too easy. Even I know this. Number 2. Name the 5 separate parts of the poem.
Death by Water.
Yeah.
A Game of Chess.
Yeah.
What the Thunder Said.
Yeah.
Burial of the Dead.
Yeah. One more.
Hang on, let me just recap.
Done them in a very strange order.
Yeah. Burial of the Dead, Game of Chess, What the Thunder Said.
Yeah.
Death by Water, The Fire Sermon.
Yeah, so John wins again. Do you want to carry on? Yes, yeah, may as well. It took me an hour to make... I almost swore then. Right, number 3. When was the poem published? That's too easy.
1922.
No, it's not. Yes. You're playing with me now. Eliot attributed a great deal of his early style to the French symbolists. Name one.
Name a French symbolist.
Yeah. Go for it.
Okay.
There's 4 really big ones.
Jean-Paul Sartre.
No, that's not on my list.
No, I don't know.
Good. Number 5, question 5. Section 2, A Game of Chess, is named after plays by which early 17th century playwright?
Oh, that's a good question. Ben Jonson.
No, it's Thomas Middleton.
Okay. Oh, good question.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to go in deep next week. I read the Spark Notes on T.S. Eliot last night at about 1:30 in the morning and thought, I can't ask questions from this, it's too hard. But
the amount of times I practiced the 5 titles of the books and I would always forget one. I don't know why, but I'm glad I got that.
Yeah.
That would really have annoyed me if I'd forgotten that last one. Right,
well done. Third, I don't think that T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland has been mentioned 3 weeks running on Radio 4. I mean, it's been mentioned 3 weeks running on Britain's premier indie rock station, XFM, I think is an incredible achievement. So congratulations, John. What's your track going to be?
My track is the first single I ever bought and the song that awoke me to the potentials of indie music. It's Pulp with Misshapes.
Shapes, mistakes, misfits. FM, Elis James and John Robbins podcast.
Now, folks, earlier in the show, we were talking about very petty things that have caused massive arguments, and you came up trumps with texts and tweets. We've got one here without a name. It says, the only argument my wife and I ever really had took place in the middle of a shopping street just by Bond Street Tube, the subject of which was who was better at Microsoft Excel. I won. Elle, what's
this is from J. Rowlinson, 86. I went through a full plate of fish and chips over a friend for helping himself to a chip. Don't get between a man and his food. I love those over-the-top reactions. I mean, imagine being a chippy and seeing that.
Oh, Quallo.
Absolutely fabulous, wouldn't it? Although Microsoft Excel, that's one of my favourite tweets of the show ever.
This is from Bob in Bolton, speaking of overreactions. Once had argument in the pub with my best friend about which was better, Return of the Jedi or Empire Strikes Back. I thought the argument was finished in the pub, and then he broke into my house in the early hours of the morning dressed as Darth Vader, wielding a meat cleaver, shouting Return of the Jedi is better. I rolled over and said, Vader's weapon of choice is a lightsaber, you idiot, and then went back to sleep. The argument continues. That is brilliant.
That is amazing. And also to anyone in his street, they will have thought that Bob in Bolton is the most chilled out guy of all time. If he can just say, oh yeah, whatever, and turn around and go back to sleep when he's got a man wielding a meat cleaver in his garden.
Elis, James and John Robbins podcast on XFM.
It's Sunday afternoon now, and it's time for a new feature in the show. A feature I've been looking forward to greatly over the last week because it was very, very, very funny. Last week, it's John Robbins reads excerpts from Tony Blackburn's autobiography, Poptastic.
That's correct, listeners. If any of you have ever read, listened or been exposed to Alan Partridge, you will be aware of this sort of thing. So it's the autobiography of Tony Blackburn's career. He puts to bed a lot of wrongs. He also speaks very highly of himself, his influence on the world and of politics. And this second chapter, so last week the chapter was about the birth of Radio 1 and the part that Tony Blackburn played in revolutionising all art. This week, though, Blackburn talks movingly of his childhood, and he sort of intersperses that with more tales of radio. So he's talking about his family growing up. And this is the first thing I'd like to read out. I was much closer to my mother Pauline's relatives, who were more easygoing. Her father, Howard Stone, was the managing director of Twinlock, a Beckenham-based firm that manufactured loose-leaf binders. Quite why I always called him Bogar was never satisfactorily explained to me. I'm pretty sure it had nothing to do with Humphrey over in Hollywood. I mean, the phrase Beckenham-based firm that manufactured loose-leaf binders is phenomenal. So he's now talking about keeping up with family members after he's progressed to his Radio 1 days.
So he's a star, just to put it into
He's
context.
now a star.
Big
He's at Radio 1, and he's talking about visiting relatives. Years later, when I was at Radio 1, I used to visit Uncle Nick in his Knightsbridge flat. We used to go out to lunch together regularly, always to Italian restaurants, a habit I still keep to this day. He was a bit of a ladies' man, and I think I picked up a few old tricks there too. I remember him having 2 girlfriends on the go at the same time, one theatrical, the other matronly. An arrangement that both knew about, but neither seemed to mind. I don't know whether it was having anything to do with his complicated love life, but Uncle Nick always seemed to suffer from poor eyesight and constant neck problems. Eventually, on a flight to New England, he collapsed and died whilst drinking a glass of wine.
The fact that having 2 girlfriends could give a man neck problems.
Okay, a couple more. So this is where Blackburn, it's a very short quote, just talks about sort of family values. Having mum at home was the norm in the immediate post-war era, and I still believe it's the best way to bring up children. I love that every so often he will give a hint at actually what is really sort of forming his character. But he never talks about it openly, but it sort of comes through unintentionally. So, despite all that, I was more than happy with my own company as a youngster. I'm sure my mother was concerned that I didn't have many friends, but I just didn't need them. To be honest, I found most of my classmates at school rather irritating. There's a really funny bit, which I can't read, it's too long, but he gets some of his family to write their own bits, so they kind of get to give their take on things.
Yes.
And he then writes interjections, so he's then answering their points, but it switches between being third person into a conversation and then out again. It's sort of quite disturbing. I'll see if I can get this across
In a sort of, no further questions, Your Honour,
yeah
way.
No, well, I can't really do it justice. It's at the end of the the chapter called Childhood, where his sister is giving her version of events, and she says things like, "He's quite a complicated character," to which Tony then adds, "Am I?" And she says, "Just a little bit complex." In what way? I can never be entirely sure what's going on in your head. I can tell you there's nothing going on. That's just it. Of course there is. You're a complete contradiction. But then it carries on in third person. Though Tony had this intensely private side, it just absolutely matters, like someone's gone insane.
Well, listeners, I cannot recommend this book highly enough. You can get it. You can get it online. I'm sure it's stocked in most good bookshops. It's called Poptastic.
The audiobook of this has become quite rare, and people obviously are really after it. I think it goes for like 25 quid on eBay. But we'll have more of that next week when we move on to a chapter entitled The Entertainer.
XFM. Elis James and John Robbins on XFM podcast.
Anyway, well, we're coming up to the end of the show now, unfortunately. I've had an absolute ball today. It's been loads of fun.
And exciting news about next week, folks. Because I, as a full-time practising stand-up comedian, am off to the Edinburgh Festival Fringe, where I shall be performing my show, This Tornado Loves You, at 9:45 every night. Do come along, do buy in advance, please, ideally now. Go on to headfringe.com, because I've sold about 2%.
But I do recommend you go and see John, because last year, weren't you the best reviewed comic at the Fringe?
Oh dear, embarrassment alert. Yes.
You were, weren't you?
If you were to aggregate all of the reviews, yes, mine was the best reviewed, so you could argue it was overlooked by the awards. If you want to argue that, do get in touch with just anyone involved in comedy, really.
Yeah, I'm not bitter about it, but John's shows are routinely better reviewed than my own, but that's fine. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing for us both to talk about that, isn't it? It demeans us both. But no, if you're going to be in Scotland during August, I do go and see John's show, because I've seen it in preview, and it's an absolute cracker.
Also, what this means is that next week's show, I will be live from Scotland, taking a break from overseeing the referendum debate. And someone asked me in an interview, are you doing any stuff about the Scottish referendum in your show? And I was absolutely not. Not at all. But so I will be coming from a sister studio in Glasgow, travelling from Edinburgh, going that extra mile for XFM.
Yeah, I'll be broadcasting from London. However, Dave won't be with us because he's going on holiday. And when he told us this, as a joke, I said, "Yeah, but Dave, I can't cope when you're not here. I just can't cope with it when you're not here, because I need you, Dave." And it was a bit of a joke. And then when I said that, I realised that it's true. Yeah, completely true, and I stand by that. So we're now working on Dave to sort of change his plans.
Also, if next week's show is slightly underproduced, wonky, rickety, off the wall, wacky, then
it's Dave's fault.
It's Dave's fault.
Yeah.
So do tune in next week live from 10 till 1.
Because as I said to Dave, you can't take time off from parenting. And Dave, I don't think, can take time off from producing the unproducibles.
No, exactly.
I need a break. I desperately need a break.
Also, over August, Elis will be performing at a thing called the Phoenix Fringe.
Yes.
Which is basically for those sort of people who can't really be bothered to do Edinburgh, sort of hobbyist performers who've maybe got like sort of rough, half-decent 20 minutes and want to do it without any sort of critical exposure or any sort of financial investment. So if you kind of just want to see a guy reading literally off the back of a fag packet, and it won't even be Super Kings, it'll be quite a small packet, then I recommend absolutely, listeners, if you're London-based, going to see Elis James at the Phoenix Pub.
There's the Phoenix Pub. It's where I got my bag stolen from. Yeah. Because I was doing gigs there. No, it's a really, really good festival for comics folks who aren't going to London, hobbyists such as myself, or maybe Frankie Boyle, who's on directly after me. Hobbyists such as Frankie Boyle. I'm from
If you want to go and see the new types of disability Frankie will be slagging off, then do go along, because he hate them people.
Well, I'm on performing on August the 4th at 8:30. It's Phoenix Fringe. There's loads of great acts, so if you're in London and you can't make it up to Edinburgh...
There are genuinely some excellent acts on.
Yes, so that's good. So, that's it from us. Dave's letting us down by going on a holiday, which is something I'm still reeling from.
I'll see you in September, Dave. That's a mad thing to think, isn't it?
Well, I'll see you. I'll come up and visit in Edinburgh, so I'll see you. I'm going to have lunch.
I'm going to miss you guys.
Yeah, I'm going to miss you too, John. Let's not do this on air. I don't like to. I would like to pretend I don't have emotions. So let's not do this on air, mate.
If you like this podcast, why not check out some of the other great ones available to download at xfm.co.uk. XFM. Josh Widdicombe.
Reg Hunter, hello, how are you?
Yes, sir, Josh Whittaker.
It's a pleasure to have you on.
It's a pleasure to see one of my own, one of my kind, doing a radio show.
Do you know what, Neil? This is a change of gear for XFM. This is...
Is it?
I feel this is the kind of thing we should be doing. Because I'm interested when you write your stuff, because your stuff comes from a very... do you start with your viewpoint and then add the jokes? Would you take stuff out that would get a massive laugh, but which you don't believe in?
I have done. There have been 2 or 3 occasions I've been on stage and in the midst of telling a joke, and then I stop, and then I say, I beg y'all pardon, I'm not going to continue this joke. And it's a hilarious joke. It's just, I don't believe in it anymore. It's just not true.
And what does the audience do when you...
Well, there's a little secret in the black community that anything that white people don't understand, they call it art.
Music that rocks. XFM.